pause from where I start. I'm not going to go back. Sorry? The voice wouldn't get through. Okay. Now, what we're saying is that these are all the different functions you've used. So these are called as functions which JavaScript provides you, right? And the common terminology is they are called as built-in functions. Any language built in. So any language usually gives you a library of functions which can fall into various categories, what based on what is the purpose of those functions. But these were all built-in functions we've used so far. You started creating your own functions, right? You learned the method how to create them, so there was a name. Now, when we look at these functions, can I use confirm just like this? What is the difference if I say confirm? Let me know if you can't see, right? Confirm, and I say, do you want to continue, right? Let's say that's your function. I can write it like this, and is that okay to write it down like that as well? Whatever message, and here. What is the difference between the two forms of writing that? This is a variable, yep. Sorry? No. When you are calling a function here, you are calling a function here, right? You cannot call this function by referring to x, is that right? But what is the difference here is confirm gives you back status. It's like I've given somebody a task, and then at the end of that task there is a status for that task, done or not done. Does that make sense? Do you understand? There is a status saying done or not done. Now in the first, when I call this function like this, I have not captured that status, whether the job was done or not done, right? But in this, I have actually captured the status of this function. It will get executed, and whatever is the end result, done or not done or completed or there is an error, that will get actually stored in X. This is the reason when we say confirm, you get a message, do you want to continue? There are two things which a person chooses, yes or no. And I wanted to know what is that he chose, yes or no. So how did we check that? Whatever he captured here, that actually got given back to me in this variable, isn't it? I got that stored in that variable. Now here I didn't wanted to store it. Here I have actually stored it. Is that right? Yeah. But we don't use this form with alert, do we? Alert, we only put the message here, but we never put a variable in here to say, because alert, we could do that, but it will always be a true. Does that make sense? Because you will always click on a okay. You will not get two values back. Is that okay? In case of prompt, again we can capture if you wanted to capture what somebody has filled in. Is that, yeah? Here, only now when you are passing this information here, at the moment this is the part which we have not learned when we've created our own functions. We never call them with something inside those round brackets. Is that right? We have always, if I've made a function with function name this, you only learn to call them like this. Is that right? Not something going in it. Is that okay? Now this part, what function gives you back is called as return value. Right? We call that terminology is that a function, when you make a function, that function can actually give back the status to the person who actually called it, whatever message you want to give back, right? You can give back string, you can give back number, you can give back true or false. You can give back whatever information you want to send back. Is that right? Now this one here are called as, there are too many words for them. They are called as parameters. They are also called as arguments, and they are also called as passing variables. Yeah, it's the same concept. What we are doing is, I mean, there could be different people using different, but they all mean the same thing, right? What we are saying is that when you are calling a function, your function needs some value to work, right? And to make it flexible, you want that value to change every time. Is that right? Like alert. Now, alert is a function. What is the job of that alert function? To give you a small little dialog box, right? Now, that means somebody creates that dialog box for you. So there are so many, there could be 10 lines to actually get that dialog box in that size, in that shape, is that right? And with on top of that OK button. But you don't know, you're not aware of that. Alert just that does for you. But how good would it have been if alert always gave hello and nothing else? Do you understand? If alert always gave be careful, I mean, whatever they could have put in, but if that was what alert does, then it is not much of use because I can't change the message on that window. To make it more flexible, what they allowed us is that whosoever will call alert can actually send the message what needs to go there on that box, which makes it more useful. So that means every time I call alert, I can tell him what message do I want. Is that, do you understand? Yeah. Now you have done various functions where you have on mouse over, you've changed the pictures, right? So let's say you've made 3 functions for 3 different images. Yeah. So I'm going to take an example where, can I clear that, right? So we are saying we are going to have a return value and we're going to have a parameters, but we are focusing on this first. Yeah. Now here, what we are saying is, you have one img tag, and that's, let's say, id equals I1, and then it has got source a, no, I'm just going to name them and then we can, right? You've got another image here, id equals I2. If you don't understand any part, please stop me there itself, right? P.jpg. And then you have img id equals I3, let's say, source equals 3.jpg. Now, till now, what you've done is that if I wanted to do an on mouse over effect, you've actually made 3 functions, isn't it? Have you done it like that? We've had on mouse over, on mouse over, on mouse over, right? And then we have function 1, function 2, and function 3, and then we've changed 3 different images on that. Is that right? But the function was, it was more or less doing the same thing. It was changing the image for that ID. So if I just tell him, if I ask that function which ID and which image to change, I don't have to write down 3 functions, isn't it? It's on mouse move, but the on mouse move, they could be different events if you like, because that has got nothing to do with function, isn't it? Function is getting called on an event, is that right? Now that function, you can either call it on click, on mouse move, or on double click, it's up to you. So you can capture 3 different events if you like, but I'm talking about the function. At the moment, you wrote 3 functions separately for 3 images. Now what we are saying is, can I just write down one function and I tell him which ID needs to and what image to replace there? It wouldn't be an array. It is when you're calling that function, you just let that know. So if I have said here on mouse move or on click, let's say on click, is there a way, let's say that function name is f, and I'm able to tell him, and that ID is I1. Is that right? And the image, which I want to bring in there is, I'll type this code and don't, right? I'll actually show you the example. if this is the way I call that function, right? And the next time I call that function, whether you call it on click or whatever, and I say I2 and I say call, what have I done? I've used the same function, but I've passed him two values. I've given him, how I've used them in my body of the function will depend, but I'm telling which ID and what image to change. Is that right? So all that function is doing is actually writing down that code through which we replace. That's all. But it knows which ID. I'm not writing down that function again and again. We had another example where we had calculated. Is that right? Plus, minus, multiplication, and division. We made 4 functions. If you only had one function and all I had to know was what was that he clicked, plus or minus or division or multiplication, I didn't really had to use these functions. Is that right? I didn't have to write down 4 functions to actually do that. So that's the purpose of having that. You can make your functions more flexible by passing values to it. That means they are doing the job, but they're not doing the job with fixed values. Every time, it's like adding 2 numbers. If I just write down on the board somewhere, I've written down a process and I've said 2 plus 3, right? Every time you will do it, it'll give you answer as 5. But if you have some way of telling what numbers to add, then it will add, but every time the result will be different because you've actually been able to give the values to it. Now this is the benefit of using functions with parameters. And this is your ultimate goal as well. This is what in programming we have. We do not have functions which do the same job again and again. You can only make programs better if you are able to write down the code which is reusable. Reusability is the first, the subject in programming, that you have to write down codes which are reusable. Yeah. So if I take this example on with it, not with this complicated, but just one simple parameter.